Hello guys and welcome back in this new video where we're going to discuss about while loop on C++. The while loop is a fundamental control flow structure in programming that repeatedly executes a block of code as long as a specified condition remains true. Unlike the for loop, which is typically used for iteration with a known number of repetitions, the while loop is ideal when you don't know before and how many times the loop should run. It continuously checks the condition before executing the loop body, making it perfect for scenarios like reading user input, processing data streams, or waiting for an event to occur. Okay, so the structure of our while loop is showing up here on our CodeLight interface. Is defined by while expression inside the parentheses statement. If you have only one line of statement, and if you have more than one line of statement, you have to use the block in order to make to avoid any compile error to provide our statement using the same structure. Okay, so right there, I'm going to work with my first example here. Let me uncomment this quickly. So I've defined my integer I and initialize it to 1, and I'm running my while loop by while I is less than 5, see out I, and finally increment I. This is really important for while loop. Okay, you always have to add that increment process at the end. Okay, so this should display the number moving from 1 to 5. Okay, so let's compare this and let's see how it's working. Okay, so I'm comparing it and I'm gonna execute it right now. I built and execute it, and you see I have 1 until 5 that is showing up. Okay, so that's a little bit it about the first example right there. Okay, in the next example, I'm going to make our while loop displaying all the even number between 1 to 10. Okay, and for that, this is the code that I've written. Okay, I've defined my integer I, initializing it to 1. Okay, and I'm running my while loop for I less or equal than 10, and I have my if condition that is nested to my while loop to verify that I modulo 2 equal to 0, get the conclusion to see out that e value. So for each I modulo 2 equivalent to 0, we have to see out I, and this I going to correspond to every even number that we're going to have. Okay, so and finally we always have to think about that increment processes. Okay, we always have to think about it. So let's save this, let's save it, compile it, and build and execute again. Okay, I'm going to clean everything after, and you see I have only the even number that are showing up between 1 to 10. Okay, so it's just awesome. You can understand what I'm talking about, what I was talking about in the definition, right? Let's take a case right now for an array. Okay, let's uncomment this array quickly. Okay, and you can see this array. I've defined this array, this integer array named score with 3 elements. Okay, So the integer I have initialized it to 0. Okay, so this is a corporate procedure. You always have to initialize your I value on to use it for while loop. Okay, so I've defined my I value. I've initialized it to 0, which should be the first index in my array. Okay, so it should be the one for the element 100. And my while loop stating that yi is less than 3, because for an array we are always start with 0, right? So we have element 0, 1, and 2. So yi is less than 3, see out the score index I, okay, and then increment I, okay. So let's run this, and you're gonna see that I'm gonna have all the elements showing up on my IDE, okay. So you see, it's just awesome. So that's a little bit it, okay. That's a little bit it. We're gonna move on this next example right now, where we're gonna implement some input validation, okay, with while loop. Okay, so this is this is an example that you're going to have to implement on your application most of the time. Okay, input validation is one of the most used cases for while loop, do while loop, and so on. Okay, so I've defined first my integer number, okay, and initialize it to 0. Okay, after that I prompt to the user enter an integer less than 100 and store it in the variable number that I've created. Okay. After that, my while loop stated that while number is greater or equal to 100. Okay. See out enter an integer less than 100. Okay. And I keep the value in the number. Okay. So that what this is the conclusion of this line. Okay, so the final output that you're going to keep from this while loop, you're going to keep it in the variable number. Okay, and finally see out thanks. Okay, so what does that mean? If I run this program, okay, if the user still provide an integer that is greater than 100, I still gonna have this message prompted. Okay, so let's run it quickly. That's a little bit how the input validation works. Okay, let's implement it quickly. I'm gonna save it, compile it, and build and execute it. Okay, enter an integer less than 100. Okay, I'm gonna provide 1000. I still gonna have the same message. If I provide each number that I'm going to provide that is bigger than 100, going to make that message popping again. Okay, and finally when I'm going to provide a number that is less than 100, I got the things. So you can see, you can understand a little bit how that input validation is helpful, right? So that's a little bit it about this one. Okay, so I'm going to comment it, and I'm going to use another example on I'm going to show you another example on how we are using input validation as well. Okay, so I'm going to do it right there. Okay, let me uncomment this. Okay, so in this last example, okay, I've defined the integer number again and initialize it to 0. Okay, and I prompt to the user enter an integer between 1 and 5, colon space quote, double quote, okay? And I keep the value in the number, okay? And I run my while loop, okay? While the number is less than 1 or the number is greater or equal than 5, cout enter an integer between 1 and 5. So until this condition get uh, uh, um, until we get out of this condition, we're still going to have this message pop up on the screen. So this is another kind of input validation, almost the same uh, uh, with the one that we have used before. And finally, when we're going to have a number that is in our good range, we're going to have that things message that going to popping up on the screen. Okay, so let's save this and compile it and execute it. Okay, so build and execute. Enter an integer between 1 and 5. I'm going to say 8. Enter an integer between 1 and 5. I'm going to say 20. So each time that I'm going to provide an integer that is bigger, that is not in that interval, I'm still going to have an error. Okay. Finally, I'm going to provide 3 and I got the thanks message. So that's a little bit it about while loop. Okay, I hope that is clear in your mind right now. If I've moved faster on some aspect, let me know in the comment, provide your question, and I will be really happy to help. Okay, so thank you for watching this video until the end, and see you on the next video. Bye.